Hello, hello, JJ here today, and I am super excited to start this conversation, mostly because we always talk about light and love, and we're actually flipping things around today with Deborah Eden Tull. She is not only a fantastic author, but she has traveled the world and also participated in many meditations and many silent meditations, which I think would be very difficult, and she's done it for decades. So I'm really looking forward to having you, Eden, share your experiences. But before we jump into all that, as an inspired soul, what really drew you to write a book about darkness?
Sure. Thank you for the question. First, I want to say that I think we can all recognize that we live in a world where, in the dominant paradigm, there's a great bias towards light and against darkness. And that turns into rejecting darkness within ourselves, within one another, rejecting darkness in nature and consciousness. So think of even the more yin, restorative aspect, winter as opposed to summer, shade of a tree as opposed to the active sun. We're experiencing the overlighting of planet Earth right now, which causes huge ecological ramifications and also repercussions for human health and well-being. And I've been on the spiritual path for a long time. I'm a Dharma teacher. I spent, as you know, 7.5 years as a Zen Buddhist monastic and have been very clear that darkness has been my greatest teacher. And that darkness, when we really investigate it, is not the absence of light, but actually the restorative, the field of all possibility, the mystery from which all of life arises and all of life returns. And if we're talking about light and love while rejecting darkness, is that love? Isn't love all inclusive? And isn't the vastness of our own human heart, when we investigate truly through spiritual practice, all inclusive? And so I wrote this book both because I love the dark. I love the dark of the night. I love the mystery, the field of possibility, the creativity that comes from resting in the I don't know, in the unknown. I love the thrill of the night sky. And I have come to see that every part of me I had once labeled dark as in bad, unwanted, rejectable, ended up being a sacred messenger and a source of vast, tremendous power. And so I really want to encourage people to investigate and maybe just let go of that hierarchy where light is held as more worthy than dark, and to embrace instead wholeness. So I wrote the book to offer a radical path to wholeness.
Well, I have so many questions. That's so great. So, your new book, A Luminous Darkness, an engaged Buddhist approach to embracing the unknown. The
Mhm.
title is so intriguing, and as an author, I know how hard titles are. So, was that something that came to you immediately, or did that come as you were writing and sort of putting together the journey of the book?
It came as we were co-creating the book, working in collaboration with my publisher, Shambhala. I originally wanted the word endarkenment to be in the title because I'm talking about a need to embrace a path of endarkenment alongside enlightenment. And in the book, I go into what that is. But we recognize people might not have any notion what that term is pointing to. And luminous darkness equally points to the depth and the invitation and the um, vibrant aliveness that we receive from turning towards rather than away from the dark.
That is beautiful. And I have to say that my lessons, my biggest lessons that are still coming in droves, come through the dark. And I've spent the last 6 years really digging into the corners of my humanness
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to understand the energies that are often driving my feelings and ultimately my decisions.
Beautiful. And so in the book, I talk a lot about the Buddhist practice of inquiry, something we practice both in meditation sitting and in meditation as a way of life. The quality of deep listening and inquiring into the moment, into our emotions that might seem real, or our thoughts that might seem to be who we are, or the conditioned beliefs that may seem limiting and set in stone. But when we investigate, like a Zen detective, when we bring the kind of curiosity with which we would bring to a dark landscape, the mind of I don't know, new possibility emerges, and a clear seeing, which I call seeing from the heart, becomes more available to us. So you might have had your own experiences of getting to see and understand yourself anew when you inquire, excavate, investigate compassionately in the way we're talking about. Yeah?
Oh, very much so. Very
Yeah.
much so. And
Yeah.
I'm a lot of mine comes in feelings and sometimes whispers when I'm clearer or I'm in the moment more often where I'm not letting all of that energy really distract me, I hear whispers.
Beautiful. And one of the things we can talk about around that is, just to use the metaphor of darkness, when we close our eyes or soften our gaze from the often distracting visual field and the field of stimulation and iPhones and etc., we allow our other senses, and most importantly, our deep listening, to open up. And as you're describing so well, the still small voice within, it talks to us softly, more in whispers than in a loud, repetitive tone that the conditioned mind speaks in. We get to hear much more wisdom from nature, from the living matrix of nature's intelligence of which we are part. We get to hear more when in conversation with another, because we're tapped in from a heart space and freer of our mind's biases. So deep listening is so much the essence of this book, and certainly of what I teach and want for our world right now. Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. So beautiful. And I just love the discovery, the investigation, and even the visuals you provide around the dark. Because when you really think about it, we spend so much time in the dark. Half of our day is in the dark, but also so many of us, I think, are afraid to really dive into the darker stories, the darker energy, the darker pieces of things that we might have shut out in a way. But I find that a lot of times those are anchoring us in the space that we're in rather than really allowing us to create the momentum to move to the next lesson.
Thank you. So we definitely collectively spend a lot of time pushing things into the dark. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to feel that. We have so much collective unmetabolized grief from so many generations that we've inherited, and grieving together and personally creating the heart space, the quality of presence to feel our feelings fully, is a necessity in the healing process. And it's an act of love rather than something that the conditioned mind might sometimes say, if I turn towards that, if I feel that feeling, I'm just going to get swallowed. So it's very important to learn how to be less afraid of the dark, and to recognize, you said, yes, we spend a lot of time in the dark, but our ancestors spent so much more time in the dark. And I'm talking about for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And there are so many spiritual traditions that have revered the night sky and darkness as the first consciousness. So again, the field from which all arises and to which all returns. So when you look in the Merriam-Webster dictionary today, darkness is defined as the absence of light and bad, negative, sinister. I invite people to question all of that, to consider that there's something else we're missing, that's medicine, that is nourishing, that we push away when we reject darkness. Yeah.
So much so, so much so. And I think it's just giving us all a pause to say, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And how many of us really do enjoy sitting in the darkness of the night and just taking in the beauty of the sky and the noises of the animals and just the part of being part of something so much bigger, I feel like often comes for me a lot of times at the night.
Yes, and metaphorically, symbolically, that learning to sit and stay present and open to what arises in the night also teaches us how to be more present and compassionately open to the more difficult human experiences that we all have. Parts of us who have been shoved to the corners of our consciousness, but are waiting to be embraced and brought into acceptance and compassion. In the creative process, it requires learning how to do nothing but surrender to the dark, the unknown, not knowing, in order to receive vision that is fresh and alive and beyond the limited human mind. So there's so much richness to learning to befriend the night, we might say. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I love this. I just am bathing in this because it's not something you hear that often. As a spiritual seeker, I think people are always want to illuminate and talk about the light and talk about, the soul connection. And I feel like the relationship between the darkness is so important. So
Yeah.
I have to ask you about the silence, though. Like when I was reading through your bio to learn that you've spent 7 years in a silent Zen monastery. Like, how did that come about? And I feel like what manifested for you during that period of your life?
Sure. Well, I would first say that if anyone listening hasn't had an experience of silent retreat, even for one day of your life, please go sign up. You will have your direct experience of what is offered only in the silence. And this relates very much to the dark. But for me, I, from a very young age, was aware both of impermanence, having experienced loss and grief. I was well aware from a young age, eyes and heart open to the gravity of what we face as a species, and have always been seeking alternatives. So I learned to meditate at a young age, and after high school, really devoted myself to daily meditation. And then at the age of 26, gave away my belongings, shaved my head, moved to a silent Buddhist monastery, which you were pointing to, in the wilderness. And part of what my heart was seeking was, I would actually say, the quality of truth and being able to recognize truth beyond so many of the collective stories, narratives, messaging, and delusions of our time. Pause, everyone, and consider that we're all fed beliefs that we then internalize from society, media, family, religion, trauma. A lot of it is not useful to us going forth, but we remain clinging to it because it's familiar and known. It keeps us in small self, but we actually, I'm suggesting, cling to small self because it's familiar, right?
Mhm.
And I was ready to see beyond that. I was ready to give myself to letting experience distill, stripping away the layers, shedding skin like a snake. And in the silence of a Zen monastery, you are well supported to do this, to shed the skins, to shed the beliefs, to face the fears. What happens if I let go of this belief? To get back to what we often speak to in Zen as a return to source or original consciousness. This seeing with the heart that I've pointed to is about seeing, experiencing, knowing life through the integration of our body, mind, heart, not the overlay of the assumptions and twists the mind puts on things. But we're a society today where many people experience their thinking mind as center of gravity rather than the deep knowing within. And I was just tired of it from a young age, to be honest. And my heart was full of love for as long as I can remember to be of service. And so I said, let's do this because I know it will help me to be of greater service. in our world to express my love fully. And it has, and it continues to every day. So again, if anyone has not had that experience, even for a day, check out silence.
I definitely want to add some links to do that. So if you know, want to send some over, we'll definitely add those. So after 7 years, did you get a sign, a whisper of what was next? So when you wrap that up, did you feel like you were preparing for your next chapter? Or when you left that part of your life, or close that chapter, how did you integrate back into everyday living, and what were you called to work on?
I didn't consciously bring that chapter to a close. I didn't intend to leave. I got bit by a tick and contracted Lyme. So, any listeners who have navigated chronic illness know what a mysterious messenger it can be and ride when you're navigating the unknown, unfamiliar body experience, ups and downs. And so we just decided I would take a few months away because we were so in the backwoods to get some medical attention. And I went for 3 months to stay with family and to stay in a city where I had more access to support. And yet, about 2 months into that time, I had a visionary dream that was really a calling. I had witnessed so much, just been reminded so much of the suffering people are living in relationships to their own selves, relationships, how people treat one another, how people walk down the street and hold tension in the body, how people treat the earth, the incredible schism of racism and social injustice. So in that time, I was just reminded of the immensity of what I had received and really aware that I could be of service now in a huge way. So people listening know when you receive a calling, like I received a calling to become a monk, there is no argument. You're not thinking about it back and forth in your mind. You're not like, should I, shouldn't I? The heart speaks and you listen. That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you feel like in hindsight, sort of you're brought out of that experience back to a town in the medical system? You know, do you feel like looking back, that was sort of the universe calling you back to another portion of your life's work?
Well, it certainly opened up a whole new phase of my life's work. And I like to say I recognized that the monastery was not a set of walls in a particular geographical location, but something that lived inside me then. The spiritual path, the seeds had been so deeply planted. And so I have been teaching for, about 25 years now, and that opened a new phase of both practice and teaching in a context where people were really wanting to devote themselves to truth, to awakening, to presence, to something beyond some of the suffering of our world. And so I like to remind people that even though I spent time in a monastery, all we need is what already exists in our ordinary life to wake up personally and as a collective. We don't need to go away to caves, to faraway places. The book that I wrote during that time, I've written 3 books, it's called Relational Mindfulness, a handbook for deepening our connection with ourselves, each other, and our planet. And it really offers beautiful and clear guidance for how to integrate the meditation invitation to every relationship and every activity of our lives. You with me?
Mhm. I'm with you. I'm with
Yeah.
you. And I think that I started mindfulness back in 2016, and it took me some time, but now, you know, it's been quite some time now. And every chance I can get to create a mindfulness moment or a mindfulness experience or have a full-fledged time to do meditation is always the times that give me the ability to really kind of like reconnect, like plug in
Yeah.
and recognize that I'm more than a human.
Beautiful. And mindfulness means to remember who we really are and listeners, that means who we already are. So it's not something we need to reach towards or try really hard to get to. It's more of a remembering, a waking up from a collective trance of separation to our inherent interconnection. And there are so many roads there. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I'd love to run an idea by you. I'd love to get your perspective because this has come
Sure.
to me. Yeah, this has come to me as something like I've had a lot of visualizations of things that have come to me. And one of them is that we all come from a bigger source, a bigger light, embodiment of energy. And when I explain sometimes to some women, the way that it's been visualized to me is essentially if you almost think of like your head, kind of opens up in a teardrop or a dropling of that universal energy comes into your body. And it basically turns your eyes on and you start to live as a human. And I feel like a lot of my work has been to remember or to allow that light to shine brighter than the ego that comes with the body that has all these conversations and it acts as a protection mechanism. And so I really work often to try to remove or sidestep sort of that ego conversation when it's not really necessary, which is most of the time, to let that light of the greater good or of that connects all of us shine.
Mhm. Thank you. So in Buddhism, we talk about that light as true nature, the
Mm.
interconnection that is who we are. We learn through living our meditation practice to live in interbeing rather than the illusion of separate self, which is what ego is, an illusion. And so part of what I hear you pointing to is that recognition that as humans, we can accept that we have both ego, our separate self, our survival strategies, and the ways we've come to identify as me and mine. And also, you referred to this drop, this non-separate Gaia consciousness, because it's not just humanity, it's all of life.
Yes.
The awareness itself that encapsulates all, the whole. And so we learn to recognize and remember and stabilize our knowing that who we are is true nature. And sometimes one of the ways we can think about it at first is just learning to, we're not trying to get rid of our ego. Good luck, folks. It's not going to work. And even pushing it away is not going to be so useful. But seeing clearly from the heart, as I've already pointed to, helps us to know, oh, this is ego in operation. And this is what it looks like when collective ego is operating, which it is strongly in today's world. And I don't have to let ego be in the driver's seat. My heart can be in the driver's seat. That's very much the discipline and intentionality of practice. And so it's much easier than we think, simply because we are not the ego, but it is a part of us. Remembering true nature feels like coming home because it's our original self. It's what we actually are underneath. We recognize it as true, and it's very easy to investigate some of the thoughts and the perspectives ego puts forth, most fear-based, and recognize, it's not actually ultimate truth. This is a story, usually based in drama and fear. Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that. I love that. And it is a practice. You have to work at it. I tell a lot of women, you can't get out of the ego haphazardly. You have to mindfully practice sidestepping or recognizing the ego's voice and the ego's energy compared to the soul energy, and dropping down into that heart energy takes practice. It takes practice.
It takes practice, and it also is an act of grace. And so we do have moments, right, when there's nothing other than dropping into that grace, life showing us, taking us out of the bubble of separate self without anything that we did. So awakening happens through our direct experience, but we have to really be willing to listen to direct experience. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. I'm trying to teach some of even my friends. I'm like, I kind of I love this idea from, I mean, it's ancient literature, this is good because, like, regardless of what it is, this is good because. And I've really been working on my mindset, regardless of what it is, waiting in a line I didn't think I had to wait in, to not getting something that I had worked so hard to reach for. And regardless, this is good because. So that's been my mindset, and just continuing to have gratitude and belief that life is happening for me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I would maybe just add that, you know, one of the teachings of resting in the dark more often is that we get to remember and feel and sense life beyond the mind of discrimination and the field of interconnection. The blanket of darkness covers everything equally in the night. Darkness is also the experience of the softer perception lens of the heart. It really invites every part of us and all beings into this field of compassion that we might, before practice, think only if I work really hard will I get there, or only when I deserve it do I get there. So to bring the darkness back in right there. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And before we end, can you share a little bit about your work at Mindful Living Revolution?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I devoted myself to a life of service years ago. That's where vibrant aliveness and joy live. And so through that time, we've created a nonprofit, Mindful Living Revolution, and we have a beautiful international community. And it's a really authentic, keep it real, down to earth. Let's really give ourselves to merging personal awakening and collective awakening, addressing how we feel and the resources we have for what's happening in our world. And so there are retreats offered, weekly meditations, all kinds of teachings about relational mindfulness, which again was my second book. And um, if people visit my website, deborah.edentull.com, they'll find all kinds of offerings. And we have a really good time. We have a really, really good time because we're remembering who and what we are together. Yeah.
Well, I have loved this, Eden, and I have felt so much energy in my body talking to you, mostly my heart chakra, and then I grounded at the end. And I hope that those that are listening are also feeling just, I would say, peaceful, the peaceful energy that you exude, and the familiarity of all energies. I think we all deeply know that there is so much truth, as you mentioned, but also good and insightful information in both the dark and the light. And I think having this conversation for me is a good reminder as well. And I'm just really grateful to spend this time with you.
Grateful to meet you as well. And just want to emphasize we need both light and dark to be whole. And we need wholeness now. We need to remember this. So thank you so much for your time and dropping into Heart Conversation with me.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm definitely going to list some silent meditations. And if you want to too, if there's ones that you recommend, you feel free to share them too in the community, because I too believe that it can seem a little bit daunting, or gosh, do I really want to do this? Especially for women that have such a hard time getting away from their to-dos and their commitments. But I feel like it's probably one of those things that once you do it once, you'll yearn to do it again and again.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. And we look forward to continuing to watch you and your work. And we're thrilled to be connected.
Take good care, everyone.
Thank you.